Okay. Good morning, everyone. This morning, I'm going to start a series of talks on they're called the five ranks of Tozan, or the Chinese pronunciation is Dongshan, but I prefer the Japanese because that's what I grew up with, and it's hard for me to change my ways. Um, and these five ranks are about the absolute and the relative, and the relationship between the absolute and the relative. And it's considered to be one of the most important teachings in our Zen tradition. But the five ranks are part of our koan system. And the great master Hakuin, who lived in the 17th and 18th century, said, "How precious is the merit gained through the step-by-step practice of the five ranks of absolute and relative." And these five ranks were elucidated by Zen Master Tozan, who lived in the 9th century in China. And they become an essential part of our training from all lineages, not just the Rinzai as a koan practice, but also in Soto lineages, the five ranks of Tozan are studied, because Tozan, as some of you may know, is the founder of the Soto school. And Tozan and his student Sozan. And so they took the first character from each of their names and made the Soto out of it. So Tozan is the toe in the Soto. And in our lineage, these five ranks are studied at the end of the koan curriculum as if they're the pinnacle of our understanding. And the marvelous teachings of the five ranks are not revealed through conceptual study. They must penetrate our hearts, our bones and marrow, in order for the depths of their content to be revealed. And in order to understand the five ranks, we must experience them with our entire body, not just with the cells of our brains. And most comments and books about the five ranks I found to be fairly didactic or scholarly in approach. And one of the things that I want to do and show the significance of the five ranks to our daily life. And like I say about everything in Zen, if it doesn't impact your life, then it's worthless. As a Zen teaching, it's just abstract knowledge. But when we hear words like relative and absolute, it's difficult to connect them to our life because they seem so abstract. So let's ask a question and then see how we might approach it from the relative and the absolute. So the question is, who am I? Okay. And as many of you know, this is a basic koan that we ask students who are starting their koan practice. Who am I? So an uninitiated person might say, I am this body and this mind. That's who I am. So suppose you have a limb amputated. Would you be diminished? Would the essence of who you are be diminished? And is your mind of today the same as the mind you had when you were a child? And you can go through a whole series of speculations, and you might come to the conclusion that I'm not really my body and my mind. So you might move on to some other arena to start reflecting on who I am. So, what about relationships and activities? So, I'm a son, I'm a sister, I'm a mother, I'm a chef, I'm a musician. So, all of these relationships and activities are temporary and transient. Am I my memories, my thoughts, my feelings? So, if this question grabs you, so the cat wants to look at my notes a little more closely. Okay. If this question grabs you, so you're probably also grappling with how you want to engage in this life that you've been blessed with. So the study of the relative and the absolute and the five ranks, as articulated by Zen Master Tozan, directly address these questions. I ran across a quote by the Indian sage Rama Maharshi, and he said, "The question, 'Who am I?' is not really meant to get an answer. The question, 'Who am I?' is meant to dissolve the questioner." Wow, that's pretty intense. And it turns a question around, you know? And it reminds me of the famous words of Zen Master Dogen in the 13th century in Japan, where he said to study the self, to study Zen is to study the self, and to study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be enlightened by all phenomena. So the more we look at who am I, who is this self, it becomes more and more elusive. So it means that all of our notions about self don't particularly help us to live a fulfilling and caring life. Oh, oh. If we can let go of our attachments to self, then everything we do and everything we encounter reveal the enlightened life. So let's consider a simple question. How big are you? So, as part of this koan practice of who am I, sometimes I'll ask, how big are you? And through the process of meditation, through Zazen, you begin to experience the dissolution, the dissolving of the self-imposed limits on your body. You begin to feel boundless, as big as all space. Or you might feel infinitesimal, as if you're contained in a grain of sand. So quite often students will say to me, I'm without limit. I'm as big as the universe. So then as you rise from your meditation seat, you bang your head on the overhead shelf, and you're immediately thrown into the reality that your boundless body cannot occupy the same space as other objects. So what is it? Are you infinite or finite? So the answer has to include both. From the absolute perspective, you're without limit. But from the perspective, you're limited by the size of your body. So what is the truth? When the Buddha was enlightened, he proclaimed, I and all beings everywhere are simultaneously enlightened. That was his experience. He realized his connection with all beings everywhere. And he realized that he is they. He is they because there is no separation. He's boundless. That is realization of the absolute. I'm sure some of you have experienced moments of the absolute. It's quite common to experience it while engaging in physical activities, such as sports or playing a musical instrument. You're so engaged in what you're doing that you dissolve into it. When you're skiing or rock climbing, you become the mountain itself. There's no separation between you and the mountain. And you reach a state where you're not thinking. You're doing, and even you that is doing has disappeared. There is only skiing or only rock climbing. It is doing without a doer. That's touching the absolute. When you experience this dissolution of self, we call it Kensho in Zen. It's a first awakening. But as one spiritual pundit said, after awakening, the laundry. We still have our life in the relative world. We have to take care of the dirty clothes, take care of the children, earn enough money to provide food, shelter, and clothes. And as Dogen said, when we forget the self, this relative life is the enlightened life. I read a interview with a Catholic priest named Father John Deere, who was a good friend of Thich Nhat Hanh's. And he said these words about Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. He said, take the experience of peace and meditation, of being totally aware and alert and alive and conscious to the ordinary aspects of your life. Drive as mindfully and peacefully as possible. You mindfully do the dishes. You have to do the dishes as if you're holding the baby Jesus. That's how present you are. You're not just doing. You do the laundry as if it's changing the history of the world. And eating, especially, you need to be mindful of what you're eating. Eat slowly. And see that the orange you're eating is connected to Mother Earth and the air and water, and that they're all one. And if you see deeply into that, not only are we one with one another, we're one with all of creation. And that deepens even our compassion and our peace and nonviolence. It's so, so lovely. Thus, every moment of your life becomes a meditation. Not only that, but that daily activity meditation, that peace that comes from that extends to all of those who come in contact with you in your life. Bernie Glassman told me the incident that made him want to become a student of Maizumi Roshi. He was looking for a place to meditate, and Maizumi Roshi was teaching meditation at a Japanese Zen temple in the little Tokyo section of Los Angeles, where when Bernie was a student at UCLA. And he went to the sit zazen with Maizumi Roshi, and they did walking meditation in between the sitting meditation. We call it kinhin. And after his first experience of meditation with Maizumi Roshi, he said, "What's the meaning of this walking meditation?" And Maizumi Roshi said, "When you walk, you walk." That's all he said. When you walk, you walk. So when you do the dishes, you do the dishes. When you do the laundry, you do the laundry. When you drive, you drive. You know, it's easy to say, but it's not easy to do because our mind is always busy, all kinds of places. Yeah. The five ranks of Tozan supposedly had a precursor, a sutra, which is called the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, this sutra. And we used to chant it at the Zen Center of LA in Japanese. It was called Hokyo Zamai. And maybe in a later talk, I'll talk more about it, but I just want to mention two lines right now. The first line says, the Dharma of thusness is intimately transmitted by Buddhas and ancestors. The Dharma of thusness. Because you won't find the word thusness in the dictionary. And that's an invented word for just this, or just thus, thusness, thisness. I've only seen them in Zen talks. We chant this in the mornings here, in the morning sittings, alternated with other chants. But further on in the sutra, it says, "You are not it, but in truth it is you." So what is the it? It's the Dharma of thusness. You are not it, but in truth it is you. So right there, the conceptual mind can't grab that. But it reminds me of when Tozan had his great awakening experience. He was looking at his reflection in a stream, and he wrote this verse: "Just don't seek from others, or you'll be far estranged from self. I now go on alone everywhere I meet it." I now go on alone everywhere I meet it. It now is me. I am not it. One must understand in this way to merge with suchness. There's another one of those words, suchness, thusness. So how can it be that it is me and I'm not it? So your notion of who you are is too small to encompass the Dharma of thusness. But the Dharma of thusness encompasses you. It is you. But you're not it. So why did Tozan say, "It is now me and I am not it"? Because there's no I to be it. So there's a new I. Once the I is dissolved, then everything we do is a dharma of thusness. Everything we are is a dharma of thusness. So what is it? We try to grab it and it disappears in a puff of smoke. So how do we find it? As a pundit said, just do the laundry. Yeah, just sit. When you sit, just sit. But that's a difficulty. Our mind is always here and there. So forget your thoughts. Forget the self. And then the dharma of thusness is you.